Okay, let's see here. I'm going to start streaming here. Yes. I'm going to go OBS. I'm going to start recording. And I'm going to record here. All right. And then I'm going to go here. All right, are you about ready?
I'm as ready as I'm going to be.
We're excited about this. All right. Hello, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to the live call-in show, Energy Reading with Lori Grant. You have to feel to heal. Lori Grant is much more than a wife, daughter, sister, and friend. She knows that her journey has a reason, and she embraces it all. Lori is a professionally trained life, energy coach, energy medicine practitioner, children's book author, and lover of life. If you have trouble saying no, feel guilty when you do, or think it's your job or responsibility to fix everything or everyone, you want to work with Lori. She lives in Littleton, Massachusetts with her husband Andy and their dog Sadie and cat Marge. Lori loves to cook, travel, and be with friends and family. Her biggest passions next to living happily with Andy. And you can check out more about her at www.lorigrant.com. That's LORIGRANT.com. Lori, how you doing today?
I'm doing good, Pete. How are you today?
I'm doing really well. So I think a lot of people are really, this is kind of like the post, holiday season, and I'm sure there's, been a lot of things that have really kind of happened for people during this time. And so is this a particular time when people are really coming to you to really help them to get their boundaries back and maybe refresh and start new, or what are you finding for people?
I'm surprisingly, I'm finding, not only in my own house, but outside, the last couple of months have been tough for a lot of people. It just seems like a lot of emotions and apathy and just frustration and just blaseness. Like the holidays this year didn't seem to perk people up the way it usually does. So this season is I'm me included, certainly Andy included. Um, so I'm finally like revamping. So I think it's I'm noticing that with the people that I'm coming across as well. With just sort of, they are just like it's different than other years. Like they're not. It doesn't seem like they're going into 2016 with all this. Woo! It's just sort of like, ooh, thank God 15's over. Okay, I'm going now. I don't know if that's it, like the whole world, but it's certainly like around the people that I know, it just seems that way. How
Well,
about for you?
well, I did tell people. I noticed a lot that just driving around that I did not notice that many people decorating for Christmas. I didn't hear that much about like New Year's Eve parties. It just seemed like people kind of like walled themselves in and like stayed really kind of small this year. Although the malls all seemed to still be crowded. Maybe they were just kind of taking care of themselves and their family, but there didn't seem to be a whole lot of really outward showing of the celebration of this season for me this year.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it just seemed that way. So it's it's a really good time. Like usually a lot of people will pull in a little bit right before the new year to really like push for the new year, but I feel like it was as opposed to pulling in to sort of push for the new year, it was like pulling to like hunker down. It was a little different than so it wasn't that same like how you pull in a little bit to like let yourself free, and
Right.
I don't feel like that was the case. I don't feel like it was like this explosion of woohoo, which it is. I guess it's okay, right? Like you got to be wherever you are.
That's true. I mean, I don't know. So how necessary do you think that final explosion is to like get out the last of 2015 so that we can like be so tired we're ready to start 2016 refreshed? I mean, do you understand what I mean? Do you think the energy is necessary to really be able to get that refreshing spirit we usually have at the beginning of the year?
No,
Oh,
and I'm
okay.
not so sure. Just like that, no.
No.
Because I think it would be fake. If it's not really what you're feeling, why are that to push it? I think is not being true to what's going on with you. I think like for me, and I don't know other people might feel differently, right? Like obviously people do. I find the fall is really my big push time.
Hmm.
Like, I get energized at the end of the summer and going into the fall. It's also my favorite season. The winter for me, now I live in the Northeast, for those who don't, the winter for me is not like, January is not like my, woo, I want to get out there and do stuff. It's like, crap, it's 5 degrees. I don't want to leave the house. So I think a lot might depend on where you live, what you're used to. Like around here, January is not really always the time to go, this is the time. You know? It's not it. You know, like maybe you're in Alabama, it's warm. It might be like
Oh,
great.
well, okay. See, now that's a comparative term, because to us we're freezing, you know.
Yeah, well, 50 is not freezing when it's 5, okay? And it's been very warm up here, so I'm not complaining. It's been very, very warm for this time of
They
year.
they both start with a 5, Lori. Don't judge, okay?
I'm going to judge. That 50 is being wussy if you think it's cool. And if you think that's bad, like go further north into Canada, and they'll tell you you're crazy at 50. Don't tell me I'm whining at 5. So,
that's
so it's
that's
all
funny.
relevant, right?
It absolutely is, and I guess that's even really sort of what I was even talking about it being relative, and our relative pattern of coming to the end of the year and being so exhausted and trying to refresh. So how do you think people are really entering this new year, since they have not had that normal pattern of like exhausting themselves necessarily, or were they already exhausted?
Right. I think a lot of that is, and I think there was a lot of stress, right? There's a lot of people are feeling anxious about all the fear mongering going on out in the world
Hmm.
with the attacks, and they're building it up. I think much bigger. I mean, it was horrible. I mean, I don't want to negate the horribleness of it, but with the election coming, they just seem to push on it and push on it and push on it in a very fearful way. And I think a lot of people are, feeling that. And I think it's creating a lot of just stop. Like I don't want to be a part of it all. So I think a lot of people are pulling back for that reason. Like I don't want to be a part of that whole. The more conscious people are coming, the less they want to be involved in that fear mongering and that news and that just clamoring on and making it worse and making it, blame and blame and blame instead of love and care and resolve. It's all about blame right now, and a lot of us we are pulling back from that and saying enough. I don't want to hear that. I don't want to be around it. It's not good for me. It's not good for anyone.
Hmm.
So
Well, maybe
we
that's a good thing to talk about with boundaries then. I mean, how do we
right.
create boundaries with, situations that are outside of our own home that, we think might somehow affect us?
Well, I think a lot of it is how much do you think does affect you?
Hmm.
Like if and depending on how empathic you are, and depending on all these other little like, these other things, you have to really set your boundaries that much stronger. So when I mean, I certainly watched the news when the Paris stuff happened. It was pretty horrific. And after a couple of hours, I finally said, I gotta shut this off. I gotta put something on that's gonna make me smile. It was horrific, but I do not have to spend the next 15 hours watching that. We know what happened. Do you need to spend the next 24 hours watching, you know, constantly negative news or whatever station you want to put on to to just have it keep bombarding you,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
So a boundary is you want to be aware of what's going on in the world. I don't want you to be oblivious, but you do not have to have it just pumping into your house 24/7 or everywhere you go. I noticed today I was at the gym and every station, right, they have like 7 TVs lined up in front of all the treadmills and the ellipticals and the stair climbers, and I love to do cardio. And I see the people get on the machines and plug right into the TVs. And it's all like Fox News and then the CBS and every station, and it's like, I was there early, so it's all the news time.
Right.
And I just kept looking down. I'm like, I don't even want to see the crawl because I don't plug in because I don't need to do that. But I don't even want to see the crawl. But you realize how often you're bombarded with it, even when you don't want to be.
That's true.
You go to the doctor's office. My doctor's office, they have the news on, and I'm like, I said to them, I'm like, why would you do that? Like, what? I just put like some comedies or something, some like, comedy, romantic drama, something, something silly on that, so that people aren't just sitting in your waiting room getting depressed, listening to like the world is coming to an end yet again.
Do you think it's like first world guilt, like we're not supposed to enjoy ourselves while somebody else in the world is having some type of a tragedy, or what do you think?
I think some people think that's how they're supposed to feel.
Mm.
But
Mm.
I don't think it does any good. I don't think it changes anything. You feeling awful for what happened isn't going to make it better. What is going to make it better is if you either take action to make it different, or you consciously say, I'm going to be sending love out to everyone I know, not fear. Right?
Right.
So the more fear that gets put out there, the more fear that's going to be conjured up.
Mm.
Right? We know what we focus on gets bigger, not smaller.
Right.
So the more fear that is spread, the more fear keeps spreading. So
Mm.
how we do that, right? Like when you go into places like that, tune it out. If you have your little headphones, put something on in music, something fun, so that you don't have to be watching that news thing. And because sometimes you're stuck in a place where it's the only thing that's there. So you're going to hear it if it's on, or if the scroll is going. You're naturally going to look to it. So make sure you bring a book. Make sure you have a magazine, something that's going to distract you so that you're not just getting bombarded with crap that you don't want in your life.
Right.
Because it's no fun. I mean, it's just no fun for that.
Yeah, and I think we've really been conditioned with that. Really probably starting in the '50s with the first moon landing, and then, with the when we were over in Saudi Arabia, and then it seems like with each thing that happens like that, we think it's almost like this thing where we have to sit down with CNN and watch everything
Right,
as it
watch every
unfolds.
detail.
Right.
And what happened is it really happened when cable TV came into existence, right? It was 24-hour news. Before, you used to get news, you get your half hour, right? It used to be on at night, right? If you caught it at 6 o'clock at night or 11 o'clock at night, and that was it.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't have news 24 hours a day.
Right.
It just didn't exist like that.
Mm-hmm.
But now it really does, and so it's really upon us, you, me, the people who don't, to really not turn it on.
Mm-hmm.
When something happens, you can flip it on and catch your half hour and then shut it off. But you don't have to. It doesn't have to be 24 hours a day. You go into some people's houses and they just have on the news constantly.
Right.
And then they're miserable, and you go, hello? Do you not see a correlation? You're listening to crap all day long.
Right.
I mean, they're basically telling you the world's coming to an end, right? Everything is a major catastrophe or disaster. You're just waiting for the next bomb to drop, right?
Right.
They're going to attack at any moment. You're not safe anywhere you go. Just listen to them.
And some people sleep with that stuff. You know what I mean? They
Right.
sleep with it on, and you're like, oh my gosh.
Right. And it goes right into their unconscious directly.
Right.
There's no break then. When you fall asleep to the news,
Uh-huh.
there's no conscious break to go, oh, they're full of crap there. Everything just pours in.
Mm-hmm.
And it's horrible. It's horrible for children. Like little kids that when you keep the news on with, like, you think they're not getting it from 0 to 2, but they haven't created the ability to block things yet or to consciously decide that isn't real. And so they get all of that just pummeling into their bodies. And then we wonder why people are more stressed and anxious today than they were 10, 15 years ago.
Right.
It's like, well, they grew up with the news on.
Right.
I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I mean, you guys, those who are listening, I don't know if there's a way for you to tell us that, but there was, my parents didn't watch the news with us in the room. Like, they didn't watch news until we were in bed when we were little. As we got older, we were allowed to, but we never saw the news until we were much older. And the kids today, at 5 and 6, they're bombarded with stuff that we just never saw. I mean, we just didn't see it. And today, these 5 and 6 and 7 year olds, I mean, who really don't know boundaries at all yet, are just bombarded and they're terrified. I mean, you see them, they're scared to death. They're just waiting for something terrible to happen.
Right, right.
And it's like, knock it off, shut that stuff off. Don't poison your poor children.
And just to give that
Don't
call,
poison me.
right. This is a live call-in show, so anybody that's listening on to the station that would like to participate to know that, if you go to the front page of True to You Radio, there's actually a link there on the show, a part that shows about this show, or you can actually call in 408-638-0968, and the conference code is 656-638-752. Probably the easiest way is just to go to truetoyouradio.com and go there and look for what is now currently live, and you'll have all those links and all those phone numbers too. So it looks like somebody has raised their hand. Should we allow them in? What do you think? We're in control here. What do you say?
I'd love to hear what he has to say. If he wants a reading or whatever
All right,
goes on in his world.
All right, here we go. Hello, caller. You're now live.
Hello, Lori. It's so great to hear your voice. It's Zapio. How are you?
I'm good, Avio. How are you?
Fantastic. I just have to say I really resonate with everything that you said with regards to what we focus on, expanding the news cycle and everything else. There's a saying in the news industry: if it bleeds, it leads. And I've been in conversations with so many people about the news always being negative, and it always seems like the world's coming to an end. It's going to hell in a handbasket, whatever. And I really think that the mentality that the news cycle has is that they focus on all the shocking things. They focus on all the things that are the abnormal behavior. They are looking at all of the stuff which is not representative of our experience as human beings.
Right.
And so, I love to hear the news occasionally. Like you, I will listen to it in very small doses if I feel a desire to do so. But then I'll pull back and I'm like, you know what? I don't need to listen to that anymore. It's nice to feel that little contrast, but I'm going to go back to focusing on the good stuff, the boring stuff, the stuff that doesn't make the headlines, because that is more of our experience. My mom hosts a lot of folks from Saudi Arabia. She's hosts a lot of students from Saudi Arabia. And I've had the great pleasure of being able to get to know almost all the students who have stayed with her. I can honestly say that to a T, all of those kids who have been coming from Saudi Arabia, coming here and studying and so forth, have been phenomenal. They have been incredible and just amazing to get to know, and they are just sweet and caring and giving and generous and just like you and me. The only difference being that they maybe don't speak English as well as we do.
Probably, some of them probably speak it better.
Some of them do, actually. So I really, really appreciate your perspective and just really enjoyed that very much. So thank you.
Glad that it was helpful.
Very much.
So so that's really fascinating how people really from different cultures are really kind of. Do you think it's because they're more into the mix of really what's happening, and they just kind of get new modalities or ways of really dealing with these types of stresses? Because here in America we've been fairly sheltered up to this point. I guess that's our fear, is we're no longer going to be sheltered with what's happened. Like I guess we did have 9/11, but so when you compare it to what the world's really dealt with. So I mean, do you understand what my question is? Do you think it's...
we are very I have a very good friend up in Canada, and she says all the time, we live in a bubble. We are completely oblivious to what really goes on. The American people in general we're closed off. We don't feel we need to know. We feel we're the strongest nation, and that's that, and we're always going to be in control, and that's the end of it. And she's always shocked and horrified, because that's not how it is in other countries. They're much more in tune with what's going on geographically around the world. They're much more aware of it. Even the younger kids, they're like in high school and in middle school, they're taught much more about it than we are. we're really very propagandized, educated in this country, and it's a little scary. It it's it's yeah, it's scary because in Europe and throughout that whole area, they travel much more than we do, and they travel to all sorts of other countries, so they're much more aware. Um, and it's intriguing with around boundaries, right? Like as as more and more things happen in this country, right, and it gets a little scarier and more, people can come in and people do things. And I mean, let's face it, the majority of problems that have happened in this country have happened from born in this country people, not from outsiders. So I just want to put that out there just so we know where I'm coming from, right? The majority of the issues that we've had in this country, aside from 9/11, have come from within. So we get all this, build up the borders, build up the borders, build up the borders. And in the European countries, 25 years ago, I traveled to England, and when you went from one country to another, and I was in Europe, and you went from France to Italy, you stopped at the borders and you got your passport stamp. Today, there's nothing. When you're traveling within Europe now, there's no borders between there's no stopping between the countries anymore. They've opened everything up. So I just find the contrast is just astounding that in Europe you can go from Germany to France and from France to Austria or Germany to Austria, and you don't have to stop. They don't stamp your hand. They don't they don't stamp your book anymore. It's just this much more open. And in this country, all we want to do is close up, close up, close up.
Right, right.
So I find it intriguing that over there it's opening and over here we're shutting down.
Right.
Or trying to. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So I would like to see it, I would like to be aware, like, for our boundaries. It's, what isn't quite current?
Okay.
Oh, you just returned? Are they shutting it down more, Sandra? It's from Paris, from France, because of everything that happened?
Sandra, would you like me to turn your mic on for you? See if she'd like to participate and ask some questions. Okay. All right. Let me unmute her. There you go, dear. You're unmuted.
Hi.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Great. And I love you, Lori. You know that. And I agree, about the importance of the subject around boundaries and our energy. I have a very different perspective right now, so I don't know if I should just throw it out.
Sure.
And it kind of started from the point of view of, over the past couple of years, of shifting my own boundaries about what I let myself be exposed to, as you started to talk about. But I decided sometime this past year to start watching the news again, and I actually have to say I was pleasantly surprised how much good stuff is on the news these days, like really, like deliberately great stories, great, whether it's local news or national news about human accomplishments and just like feel-good stories on the news. So I just want to throw that out.
No, there are, and I notice it more with local news than I do with the national news. The local news definitely does those.
I think it's changing, I guess, is the point. But I think that, as you said, there's also other political agendas and things like that. But I see it that sometimes we see what we look for, and so whether it's people talking or social media, sometimes we can get sucked into whatever our fears might be, or conversely, we can get pulled to whatever our hopes might be, either way. But I had planned to go to Europe and Asia at the end of the year, and I had already booked my trip to Paris when the bombs went off, and it was actually a great opportunity for me, even though it was a horrible circumstance. It was really, nobody's happy about what happened, but I think it was personally sort of a personal life challenge that I really wasn't sure if I was still going to go about a week after this happened, or a little more than a week later, maybe. And I decided to go forward with my trip. So I ended up going to Paris, I went to Oslo, I went to Amsterdam, and I ended up in Asia and came back. And the short story is, it's really a different environment right now. Like we had post 9/11, and it's like every place else. There's good in the world, and there's great people in the world, and then there's also problems that are in the process of being dealt with. But I just want to sort of interject, not to grandstand on it, but it was not maybe the way Europe was even a few years ago because of the recent events. And when I say that, just to clarify, there were armed military assault rifle people, men and women, 5 or 6 on every major street corner. It was a lot of military presence, it was a lot of security presence. And I think in the context of what has happened, it's the aftermath. I don't know that it will be like that forever. I think that no matter what country we're from, we're looking for solutions. But I do think it's sometimes our tendency, and I put myself in this category too, of being Americans, that sometimes we see something and we think, oh, whatever we saw, then that we have a handle on it. And the truth is it changes, it's dynamic. So I'm not an expert on it. Maybe it's changed since I just got home. I don't know, but my hope and trust is we're learning and growing and evolving. And I really want to hear about the boundary stuff, because I feel like, that how we experience and react or don't react is what matters individually and then collectively. But I want to hear what you want to say about that.
Well, so individually is how we're going to react collectively, right? So this idea, right, of how we do, right, it really is that line. You have to be the way you want to, you have to be the change you want to see in the world. If you react, or I react, or whoever reacts constricting and fearful and, oh my God, we have to close up and we have to, so we can do it. You like looking at the geopolitical situation, right, with terrorism and closing the borders, well, whatever you want to do, right? Pay attention to what's going on with people in general, because that's what's going to show up nationally. It's going to show up in your towns, your states, your nations, all around the world. The more fear that we have and the more we close up, it doesn't take long for that to go to the school level, right? Your local schools. We're going to put in detectors. We're going to do that, right? They're slowly going to, right? You're going to see that happen. And then you'll see it happen in the state level. It'll get a little more and a little more. And it grows. That's how it works. So how we do it individually and what we stand for as a small community and for ourselves and then as our community, that's what's going to show up in the big picture. The micro is the macro. No, the macro is the micro, right? However that works, right? What happens in the small towns happens in the country. It doesn't alter much. You'll have your few that stand apart, but in general, how we do it individually is how it's going to show up nationally and internationally. And that's why it's so important for us to, it's very normal, like right after 9/11, everything sort of shut down, right? And you had to be more careful. And the same thing is happening in Paris. But what we hope and we pray doesn't happen is that it gets to, you can't come in.
I think the thing, if I can just add, is, and I think that's brilliant what you said, that what happens individually happens, on the macro level or locally, happens globally. That's absolutely true. But there's also the opportunity for leadership. And I think even at individual level, where we hold ourselves, everyone that, if we're talking about a particular issue, maybe a particular issue is feeling secure in the world. The opposite, what people really want, of terrorism, the opposite of that is to feel secure in the world. Right. So people are looking for leadership, and I'm not talking about an election or anything like that. I just mean in a sense of how do we find the way to hold ourselves, as you said, individually and then in our families, in our community, to embody more of the security.
Right.
In the sense of, I'm not talking about military, in the sense of
Right.
how do we feel?
How do you personally feel safe?
How do you feel, you know, trusting? How do you feel hopeful, optimistic? How do you do that, you know? And it's not impossible. And
It's
it
not impossible.
takes effort sometimes.
Right? Because I'm living proof of it. Because honestly, even when all the crap happened, and I know this might sound silly, but Mr. Rogers wrote a beautiful piece after 9/11. That I think it was right after 9/11. When bad things would happen, he would ask his mother, "How could somebody do that? How could somebody hurt somebody?" And like, what's happening in the world? And his mother always would say to him, "Look to the helpers. Look to the helpers." Because whenever something bad happens, you look to the people who are serving and coming to the rescue, if you will. Because those are the people you want to focus on. Because there's much more of them than there are the other. So I always remember after the Boston Marathon bombings, right? There was two people that blew up those bombs. But there were hundreds and hundreds that came rushing forward to help the people that got hurt. And then the hospitals in the Boston area had to turn people away because they could not take any more blood because of all the people who went to the hospitals over the next couple of days to donate. They could not even store, they could not help, they couldn't take any more. And so for those two people, tens and tens of thousands of people came forward. That's how you hold your boundary. That's how you make a difference in the world. You don't do it by going, "God damn it, this shouldn't have happened." Right? You say, "What can I do?" It might not be a lot. It might be, "Look, I can't donate blood, but gosh, do you need help with like organizing it? Because I would like to be able to participate in that." Or I want to donate blankets to a country that just had an earthquake. I want to be able to, any little thing like that. That's your boundaries. That's you telling the world how you want the world to be. And that's what makes humans humans. That's what makes it so powerful. It's not every man and woman, child for themselves. We don't do that. I mean, we see it time and time again when something tragic happens. And it can be man-made tragedy or nature tragedy. Whenever it happens, people come together, ultimately. And that is what I focus on all the time. I don't, you can focus on 15 people got together and created this hell in Paris. But then how many came together after? And how many, even during it, protected other people? And so that's the difference. And you might die doing that, I might add, right? Like the woman at Sandy Hook who stood up and said her kids weren't in the class, right? She died doing that. But that story will live in infamy, right? That's what we want. Like, how do you want to be in the world? What is your boundary? Or are you going to, run and hide? Are you going to stand tall? I mean, and no one knows until they're in a situation quite like that, but in the day-to-day that's not life-threatening, we can decide, do I want to be a helper or do I want to, be a hermit? And sometimes we're going to be a little bit of both. There's no tragedy in saying, I need a couple of days to hunker down and figure it out. And I think then take some action. But if everybody hunkers down to figure it out and never steps out, then the people who are harming win. And so, but it doesn't mean you have to be, it doesn't mean you have to be the person that rides up on the white horse. You can be the person that ships a blanket. We don't have to, it doesn't always have to be huge things. I got my arms going out. So it doesn't always have to be huge things. We can make a huge difference in small things. And when we can honor that in ourselves, our boundaries get stronger and stronger because we can own that we make a difference as we are in this moment. And that's really good for our third chakras, for those of you who do chakra work. That's all your self-empowerment stuff. And we always think, I shouldn't say we all think this, but so many of us feel like if we're not doing something on a huge scale, it doesn't count. But the truth is, the majority of changes that happen in the world happen on a very small group of people doing very small things consistently. Makes all the difference in the world. And that's how we have to do it. And when we can own that and not beat ourselves up for not being, like we talked about at the very beginning, 2016, woo, I'm going for it, right? Like they say, oh God, Jesus, it's already 2016. I didn't get near what I wanted to get done in 2015 done, right? So, like, am I celebrating 2016 or am I going, oh no, shit, another year and I didn't finish what I wanted to do in 2015? So, wherever you're at, if we stop beating ourselves up for not being the big one and just let ourselves be, our strength and our inner strength will shine to the rest of the world. We don't have to be the ones that are out, speaking in front of 25,000 people. We can help 5 people in a week. And those 5 people can help 5 people and 5 people and 5 people. And when we stop thinking that we fail when we don't do the big thing, we'll be able to do small things and be happy with it. I think that, as a community and as a nation, I think we've gotten away from that, away from the small stuff. Everybody thinks because it's social media, and I think that has a lot to do with it. Like, I got to be out there, I got to be on here, everybody's going to know. Instead of like, oh, I did this, this, and this. Well, that's really good, but it's not like, oh, well, it's not like Facebook worthy. It's not Twitter worthy. Like, oh, I shipped a blanket to somebody. Right? Like, really, am I going to post that? No. If I had shipped 50,000 blankets, well, yeah, I'd post it, right? So that kind of stuff, I think, that's what helps our boundaries. Like, owning that we are perfect as we are, with our fears, with our, like, exactly what you said, Sandra, about I wasn't sure if I was going to go, right? There's some legitimate fears there, right? Like, geez, that just happened. How secure is it right now? Well, truthfully, right, and I know people don't like to hear this, security is a false thing, right? We're not secure. Well, I mean, we're just not. I mean, a meteor could come and hit the planet at any moment, right? We think we know what's going on there, right? But we have no clue, right? And we don't, So security, we build it up like we have all the security, right? Because it's a whole control thing that we like to have. But the truth is, in general, we don't have a lot of control over anything at all. Very little, except what we do and what we think. And if we could accept that, we could think and do a lot better than if we stop trying to control what everybody else is doing and thinking. Because we have a tough time doing it for ourselves, right? Like, oh, I want to stay in a good place. Oh, crap, there I go, thinking about crappy stuff again, right? And then we're mad at other people. So our boundaries are ours. We have to deal with those first. And that's going to be a challenge all the time. Well, maybe for not all people. I just want to put that out there. Some people have no problems with their boundaries. I have some friends that are really good with it. They're just, whoop. And I'm a little envious. They have other issues. But for me, my boundaries is my biggest battle. It's my battle. So it's why I share. It's why I talk about it. Because holding space for myself when other people are upset is going to be a challenge, right? So we like, that's what Abby was saying, like watching the news, do we get to be happy when somebody else is miserable? And the answer is yes, because you being miserable isn't going to make them happy. You get, when you are taking care of someone who has the flu, you do not get the flu to take care of them. Right?
Right.
So the line I always used at the hospital when I worked there was, do not climb in the pit to help someone out of the pit. That is not the way to do it. You do not climb into the doldrums of despair or fear with somebody to get them out of it. You show them the light. You be the light so that they can climb up and out. And that comes from whether you're depressed, whether you're sick. You don't get the flu to get somebody else better. It doesn't make them better. So you getting depressed is not going to make somebody feel better. It's never going to work. It's just now you're going to have two depressed people going, yeah, life sucks. It's just not going to work. Sorry, did I go on a little rant there? My bad. Oh, it's my radio show. I can do whatever the hell I want.
That's right. I love it. Claim it.
Sorry. So that's the first step with boundaries, is when you're noticing that you're falling into the pit with somebody else, stop, pull back. Even if you have to walk away and it seems mean, walk away for a little bit till you can reassess and go, oh yeah, I'm not supposed to be in there with them. That's not my job. It's not our job to make somebody else happy. It's our job to support them and love them and have compassion. Their happiness is on their shoulders. Now, we can do things to help them, but that does not mean that we're responsible for their transition into happiness. You can't do it. Has anyone ever tried? Show of hands. How's it worked? It doesn't work very well, does it? How miserable do you get trying to make somebody else happy? Fabio's hanging himself there. Yeah, it's you can't do it, and what happens is it depletes us, and that's where we end up with a big. So it happens, like, think about it. It happens when we do it with our friends and family and loved ones, right? We do that. So imagine what it's like if you think that after, say, the Paris event, you don't feel like you should be happy because all those people are miserable. Well, is it making them happy? Does you sitting at home going, oh my God, this is awful, I just feel so bad, I can't function, do you think that makes them happier? No. No. It doesn't change anything about their life right then. All it does is make you miserable with them. So it's a challenge. I'm a big one on, I do crystals, okay? So not crystals like, I don't collect crystals, like I'm not like the Erica Rock of the world and doing all my crystal stuff. I do crystals for my boundary. I envision, now I love to be around people and I love to see people and I want them to see me and be with me. That's sort of my thing. So my crystals are clear. They're clear crystals, and I imagine them all around me. And that's always my boundary. So that I can see and be with people, but their stuff stays their stuff. And I pay attention to my crystal wall. And I notice when it's getting all pitted, because they're trying to get in. And they want in, right? Because who doesn't? If you're in a good place and they're not, they want in. And honestly, I want them in. Okay? I keep that boundary up not so much to keep them away from me, as much as it is for me to stay the hell away from them and keep my space in a healthy way. Because I will envelop other people. Because I want them to feel good. I want to hug them and I'm going to make them all better. So I have to have that crystal up for me, because it gets pitted on the inside too, because I want to get to them. So you want to be aware, like, how much is really them coming at you and how much is you wanting to resolve their issue for them. So you want to be careful with that. So I notice when it gets starting to get pitted, I'm like, oh, it's time for me to put new crystal up. Like, so I just imagine all my little crystals all getting replenished and fixed and all around me, so that, because I have to be as careful about letting them in as me overstepping my boundaries into their space. So that's what happens with empaths a lot of the time is it's not just that the people are coming into their space. They are wide open and trying to get into the other person's space to make them feel better too. And so it's just as detrimental. It probably more so than actually letting them in. And by the way, we do let them in. They don't force themselves in. We go, come on in! And then we go, why are we so exhausted? Because we've invited 7,000 souls to try and get into our soul space. And then we go, gosh, I'm really wiped out. So the healthy boundaries, you know, and there's going to be different levels, right? Boundaries we've talked about this before. There's rigid boundaries, there's porous boundaries. You want a mix. Like some people, no matter what, like there's some people that they're always grasping, right? So I'm sure we all know people that they want stuff from you all the time. They want you to be the one that does everything. They want, you know, they're always conniving to get you to do stuff, right? They can be perfectly nice, but that's how they function. It's not a bad thing, but those are people like that. I'm going to have a really rigid boundary. Like, nope, you're not getting in anymore. Let you in, it wore me out, done. I'm going to have a really rigid boundary with people like that now because I shouldn't say people like that, people who have done that to me in the past. I try very hard not to take what somebody else has done and project it onto the next person. But I certainly went to school with somebody and he was very much like that. And I had to really put up a big, like, no, you can't just access me whenever you want. Like, that's not going to work for me anymore. And it took me, you know, only 53 years to figure that out. So I figure that's pretty good. So, you know, and I've had a whole year of doing it like now, right? So now you know my age, but I've done a year of like, no, they don't get to get in. Because I always thought that was cold. Like, you should let everyone in, and you should be there for every human being. And that just doesn't work. So having a little bit of give and take, like knowing who to put those boundaries up for. Just like what went on in France. This horrible thing happened, and what did they do? They put up boundaries again. Now, hopefully they won't have to be up for a long, long time, and they won't assume that everybody is bad because of that handful of people that were, right? But sometimes you do have to, like, you have to hunker down and go, wait a minute, let me get the boundaries up. We've got to figure out what to do next. And then you sort of breathe again and you start to look at things in a bigger picture and you determine it. So it's the same thing for people. When somebody comes in, you know, you see it all the time with relationships, right? A relationship comes to a crashing end. Somebody cheats on someone, right? Like, I don't know if anyone's ever been involved in that. But the ability to trust the next person that comes into your life without that judgment of, well, the last guy cheated on me, well, the last one cheated on me, I'm not going to, right? I'm not going to trust them. You don't get to do that. You don't get to judge the next person based on the last person. It's so not fair. But we do it. So we have to be really conscious of that. That's a big boundary issue, though, right? Any questions about that? Does that make sense? Does it resonate? Are you thinking I'm full of crap?
It makes sense to me, Lori. It does, and it's really calling to home about two things. Number one, not to climb in the pit with somebody else, and really not to expect anybody else to climb in the pit with me.
Oh, yes.
Mm-hmm.
That's harder, isn't it?
It is. It's tough because I want everybody to climb in the pit with me.
Yeah. That's your charismatic leader, by the way.
Is that what it is?
Yes.
I'm gonna lead you to heck or to heaven, one way or the other, right?
Right. The charismatic leader very much is going to want the people to be with them, good or bad. Right? Well, I shouldn't say that. That's really the defense. The defense is going to want people in the pit with you. Mm-hmm. The charismatic leader would never want people to climb into the pit with them. But the enforcer will be like, come on down here, damn it. Let me show you the way.
The water is awful, and I want you to join me.
Right. You know, it's like, oh, I don't think this tea is any good anymore. You have a taste. Well, how many times have we done that? How many of you have ever done that, right? You smell something, you're like, oh, I don't think want to try it and check it?
Right.
Have we not done that? Right? Like, hey, honey, will you check this? I think it's bad. Have you done it? Right?
I've had it tried to be done to me before, yes.
Yeah. So it's sort of right along those lines. I try to make it a little lighthearted, right? It doesn't always have to be just down the depths of despair. We do it and that's a great way to notice your boundaries. You know, it's hard. It's really hard to catch how we do our boundary stuff in the big, deep, intense stuff, unless we really have somebody outside of us working with us to point out, like, oh, you're doing that again, right?
Right.
But it's the little things. Like, notice, like, the little things around food. Like, how are you with sharing it? Are you like, get your hands off my plate? Or are you like, whatever you want, take it, and then sort of be resentful because they ate what you really wanted? Right? Like, we laugh. I see Sandra laughing, right? Like, oh, yeah, that's wicked funny. Except that will tell you gobs about yourself. And not one little thing. Like, oh, I told them they could have it, but then when they actually ate it, I'm at the table kind of miffed. Damn it. So what does that say? Oh, is that telling you right there, oh my gosh, I do that with way bigger things all the time. Way more important things. So you can notice it in little things like that all the time. And that will give you a much broader picture of just how you function with your boundaries. Like, oh, you can have it, and then 5 minutes later, I can't believe they took the last piece. I really wanted it. Oh my God, I actually offered it, and I wanted it. I put them way ahead of me.
Wow.
Where else do I do that? Okay? So, because I'll tell you, if you do it with those little things, you do it with all the big things. Because you know the line, right? How you do anything is how you do everything.
Right.
So you notice that, and you just pay attention to those goofy little things. Are you the person that lets 43 cars go in front of you when you're at when you're at an intersection, and then you're late for work, and you're like, well, I was trying to be nice, and then you get in trouble, right? Nothing wrong with letting cars go ahead of you, but do you do it so that your needs are no longer valid? So you pay attention to all those little goofy things. And so it doesn't always have to be the big giant things. Because sometimes those, surprisingly, are a lot harder to see. Because there's so much more emotion involved. So it's really, really hard to let go and see, like, oh my God, I totally just lost myself in that person for the last 8 years, right? So, thank God I've never done that. Just a few years, no. But it's being very aware. And today it was intriguing as we were coming into this call, right? Because I think most of you are friends with Andy on Facebook and everything and know that he's really been struggling. And it's been, talk about not climbing into the pit, right? Like, how do I maintain me while I can be compassionate and supportive of him? And I think I did really, really well in comparison to previous experiences of this. It doesn't mean I did perfect, but I think that's part of the growth of boundaries, and that's part of the issues of boundaries. You're going to be confronted with different things at different times, and hopefully we can take a step back and say, how am I going to do it? Because sometimes just that one question will keep you out of the pit. How am I going to do it? How am I going to handle it? What am I going to do this time? Because so often we don't think about it. We just jump in, and then we're in there and we're like, oh crap, this isn't how I anticipated it to go. So if we can step back a little bit and ask that one question, it can bring us to a level of consciousness that makes us not climb into the pit. And makes us, reach out to a friend and go, yeah, I could use somebody to talk to. right? Because how often do you do that? How often when things are really difficult do you reach out and say, I'm stuck here? Or do you wait until it's either so deep in and you're such a mess, or you've already gone through it and you're on the other side of it and you go, ooh, that was a tough call. Hey, listen, let me tell you about what happened. Instead of when it's actually happening, right? And that's the problem with those of us who struggle with boundaries, is we don't want to bother anyone else with our stuff. We'll be there for you, but listen, I'm good. No, really, I'm all set, right? And meanwhile, you know, in my old days, right, I would just be like, no, really, I'm good, as I'm like just eating and eating and eating and eating, right? But I'm good. It's all good. I'm fine. Let's get out of the way. I'm having another pizza, okay? So, however it works for us, right? And I just want to thank Heat Hypnosis in Springfield, Massachusetts, because I did a little hypnosis work for my eating, so that's why I don't do that anymore. But you want to just be very aware of what your patterns are and how they show up. And I use the food one because that's an obvious one for me, right? Because I have food issues, and or I had food issues. But that you can have it, and then being resentful is it's a small but major little thing that I've done in my whole life. You know, where do you want to go for dinner? I really, you know, I really had something in mind, but I asked you, and then I agree with where you want to go, even though I really wanted something else, right? Something little, but how often do you do it? You know, I'm all for compromise in relationships, but how often are you the one that just never says what you really want? And then you're mad at your partner, your friends, and they have no clue because you never told them.
And as you were speaking, I you know, we even will do that with our spiritual connection. You know, a lot of times we don't go ask however we think of, you know, our higher power until we're like, you know, in that desperate situation. You know what I mean?
Right. It's funny because I gave Andy a healing today, and it's the first time he's asked for one in a long time. And it's like, well, I should have, you know, this is what I do for a living, for the love of God, right? I should have had him on the table every week for the last 3 months, right? But no, I wait, right? And he's like, I could really use it. Yeah, I'm like, oh yeah, that'd be a good idea.
It's
right?
the plumber with his own house, right?
Right. Right. You always said the shoe cobbler's kids never had shoes.
Right.
Right. It's that same, you know, like I, you know, once he said it, I was like, oh my gosh, he should be getting healing every week. But like when we get so involved in our own stuff, it's very hard to see the forest through the trees.
Right.
So it's helpful to be able to talk to somebody else and have them go, hey, have you done healings on him? And you go, oh, no. Good idea.
Right.
So and it's the same, you know, for me to reach out to friends to get help, for him to reach out to get help. And for you guys, it's that same thing. Part of boundaries is it's not about not reaching out. It's about knowing that you need to. And doing it in a healthy way, not in a help me, save me way. Doing it in a, this is going on in my life, I could really use some support around.
Yeah.
Because we all know the help me, save me way, right? You know, you guys know that that's the friend that is graspy, or you could possibly be that person. I believe I have been that person at some point in my life. That graspy, and everyone's avoiding you like the plague because you're just like this big graspy, like give me, I need, and you don't actually say it like that, but all your energy is just screaming, save me.
Right.
So we just want to be aware of that and notice and be like, I need to do it. Right back to, how am I going to handle this? Ask yourself, what is going on with me? How do I want to handle it? Yeah, those questions, what's going on with me and how do I want to be with it? That will help you with your boundaries tenfold, more than anything else, because it gets you out of your head for that brief moment, for you to consciously make a choice.
Right. Well, we've come to the end of the show, my dear. Do you want to give out your contact information so everybody knows how to get in contact with you?
Sure, you can contact me at Lori, Lori, the only and best way to spell Lori. Lori at lorigrant.com. And you can follow me on Facebook at Leg Up Healing. And Twitter is Energy Coach Lori at Twitter.
Amazing. Well, we appreciate everybody participating with us tonight. Thank you for True to You Radio and ZCED Online and our tech team for making this possible. And we'll say good evening, okay?
Yes, okay. And thank you, everyone, for being on. I love you all. Have a great night.